So it is now 6 o'clock in London. It is 8 o'clock as the sun is going down behind me. You can't see it, but I am down for the Indaba Mining Conference in Cape Town, where there's been a lot of discussion and positivity about the potential rebound for the lithium price. So we're delighted to welcome everybody for what is now the second bi-weekly CTL webinar. The last session, we had a discussion about the update on the drilling campaign. And the purpose of these was to focus on particular individual areas that affect the company and therefore the future share price and therefore of interest to the shareholder base that we thought would be interesting to give a further deeper dive. So I'm delighted today to be joined by not only Aldo and Steve as usual, but also by Alvaro Florez. I'm sorry, my pronunciation there of names is not fabulous. Who's going to take us through a little bit more in depth about the CEOL application process and how that works in Chilean law and how the timelines that investors can expect. But before we launch into that, we'll just have a little review. We've had a very good day, as I'm sure many shareholders will be following. If I just bring up our share price in today, just going to focus this. So we've had a bit of a solid day today, bringing us back up, closing at 18.5 on a volume of just under 1.8 million shares. We had a volume of about 2.5 million shares yesterday. I think from memory, there's about 130 million ounces standing after the last issue. But we do seem to have hit a bottom and we're starting to see increased volumes and a share price recovery. So I'm sure everybody on the call will be very glad to see that, and we hope it continues solidly over the next coming weeks. I'll take this off. But Alvaro, can I just pass over to you then, maybe give a background to yourself and to your role within the company, and then everybody please either email me questions directly or put them up in the chat, and then we'll get to them at the end. And a little bit after this, I'll ask Steve, there was a couple of questions about the announcement of DLE from the other company the other day. But we'll go for there. But Alvaro, please, if you could give us an introduction to you, that'd be great.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to your webinar, Daniel. It's a great pleasure. Well, as you said, I'm the legal manager of CleanTech Lithium. I have more than 15 years of experience working in major mining companies for its Chilean operations, while also in one of the top law firms here in Chile, always related to mining and corporate matters.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think the one that people were trying to understand was to understand exactly how the sale process works, where we are in that process, and what's the sort of typical timeline. I'm actually going to bring up some slides that you did, and I can put them over. Do we have the slides? Can you just see at the other end?
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep.
So I'm going to skip back to these at the end a little bit more, but let's talk about the main one and I'll come back to the market. So do you want to take us through, Alvaro, what is the CEOL process
Sure.
and where we are and how it's going to work for us?
Sure, well, I'll be happy to. It's quite simple, you know. Well, the current mining code, which was enacted on 1983, established and left aside the lithium because it was considered as a strategic resource for the state. So it was reserved for the state. Despite that, it doesn't mean that it cannot be extracted and exploitation cannot happen by following a specific path that I will describe right now. In addition, it's very important to mention that despite the CEOL, it is always good and recommended having the mining concessions over the area that it is intended to be exploited in order to avoid any opposition for third parties and potential coexistence with other projects. And in that regard, it is worth mentioning that Atacama Sad Lake, an SPV which is 100% held by CleanTech Lithium, holds more than 21,000 hectares in the Laguna Verde Basin.
So that's just to clarify. So you're saying is that we have the license, we have the licenses, but the key one is the CEOL process, which we've now put in the application for.
Exactly. Well, there are two things running in parallel. The license grant the company the right to exploit all the concessible substance within the area, and in order to avoid any opposition from a third party is the reason why the company has acquired directly or through option agreement with the third party those mining concessions. And on the other hand, you apply directly for a CEOL that will grant you the right to exploit such a specific area.
Okay, I'm not sure. I apologize. There's a bit of a background noise in. I'm not sure if it's at your end, Alvaro.
Sorry.
But
yeah.
I know where you are on that one. No problem. These things happen. Alvaro, you're still on mute. So,
sorry, my apologies.
Don't worry. So let's go to 101. So for somebody who doesn't know anything in Chilean law, take us through what is the CEOL process, where we are in that process, and how it goes from here, then, please.
Sure. If you can turn the slide, please, Daniel.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, the process is quite simple. It's established in the Constitution and also in a specific regulation, which is the Exem resolution number 786, which was issued by the mining minister on 2021. And you have a two stages permit. From one end, you need to get the CEOL, which is more than a permit. It's a contract that you execute with the state. And once that contract has been awarded and it's executed, you can ask the Chilean Commission of Nuclear Energy for a quote permit. So at the first stage, you get the permit to exploit the lithium, and at the second stage, you get a specific authorization for extracting a determinate quota of lithium over the same area. Okay, that's the two stages specific permitting for developing a lithium project. So if you can go to the next slide.
No,
I'll refer firstly to the...
Just on that note, Alvaro, so we put in our application to the government last year.
Yeah, yep. Exactly, during the last quarter.
Okay, and I'm assuming this is about a 150, 180 page document that would have outlined all the plans that the company has.
Oof, much more.
Really? Okay, so
it's more than 1,000 pages document. It's quite complete. You know, the idea is to present all the technical and commercial information the company has.
Okay, so a lot of work last year went into preparing that for the sale, and that went in. Remember, was that in November we submitted that, or?
On September the 6th.
September the 6th. Okay, I should look back at the RNSs. So that's gone in, and then how long does the and that's gone in directly to the mining ministry. How long do they have to review that? I mean, that's one of the things obviously there. I knew it was a bit more than 150. It was kind of leading less question, but it's a weighty document. It's more than 1,000 pages, so obviously it takes them some time to review and go forward. But sure. Is there a window in which they need to come back, a legislative window by which they need to reply to the company?
Yeah, well, although the Exem resolution established that they should come back within a determined amount of days regarding the admissibility test, it is important to highlight that on August last year there was a change on the mining minister, or also the vice minister of mines. So it's important to mention that there were some changes, and probably there are some delays in many processes open before the mining minister.
Okay,
but yeah. So, but it is a simple process, and currently what we're waiting for is to get the admissibility approval. We've unofficially held conversation with people at the mining minister. They mentioned that we should hear back from them within a short period of time.
Okay, very good. And just before we jump on the next page, it's not tagged, but this photograph that we have, which is fantastic. This is on, Steve, sorry, I muted you out. It wasn't sure if it was your one, but is that Laguna Verde we've got there?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Laguna Verde,
Yep.
and that's the current drilling, or is that a historical period drilling campaign?
Excuse
Aldo,
me?
if you want. Is that a current picture of the current drilling we're doing, or was that from last season? I just out of curiosity, really. It's relevant in there. I'll get Aldo to jump in later on. Right, so let's moving on. So the stages we have here, you were saying.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we are in the first stage. So we presented both applications for the Laguna Verde and Laguna Negro Francisco project on September the 6th last year. Currently, they are under admissibility, which is something quite simple, but not easy at the same time because there is a lot of information to be assessed. Once that admissibility stage passes by, the Ministry of Mining defines two different committees, internal committee that will assess the bottom of the application, both from a legal and from a technical point of view. Only if needed, but it is very likely that is needed, the document we submitted will be also revised by some external authorities with competence over mining matters, such as the Mining Geology Service, such as Cochilco, and could also be revised by the National Nuclear Energy Commission. Once that the mining minister receives the report, they finally decide on whether to issue the resolution approving the CEOL application. And after that same resolution, those terms, which are technical, commercial, and legal, are the base for a contract that the company shall have to sign with the state of Chile, duly represented by the Minister of Mines. So at the end of the day, what you get after your approval, it's a resolution, but the terms of those resolution set the grounds for the contract. And at the end of the day, the contract terms are the same as the one contained in the resolution. So it's just a formality. That's what I'm trying to mention. Hello, Daniel?
Jan, you're on mute.
Yeah. So I meant that it's only a formality at the end of the day, the conversion from a resolution to a contract.
Dan?
Sorry, it seems you're on mute, Daniel.
Well, Alvaro, if you want to just cover off these 4 key points here.
Sure. Yeah, at the end of the day, what it is important to keep in mind is that the lithium was left aside as a consensual substance, but at the end of the day, the same regulation that left the lithium aside contemplates a specific path for companies to exploit the lithium and to develop a lithium project. It's a path that it is regulated in the XM resolution, a recent one issued on 2021. It's a simple way, although it contains a need to be presented with a lot of information, and the amount of information that a mining project like this one or any other one needs in order to become real.
No, I think we've lost Dan's audio on that one. I think if we can just add some color on the on the CEOL, and perhaps Aldo, you can cover this. What are the sort of financial conditions that we can expect to see in the CEOL? What have we volunteered to the government?
Okay, yeah, the CEOL, it's a contract. It's Contrato Especial de Operación de Litio. It's a special operating lithium contract where we agree terms with the government on the financial conditions of the project going forward. The government has said that it has to be equal to those contracts that are actually leasing contracts of Corfo, who's an office from the government here in Chile, who leases Salar de Atacama, the richest salar of the world, to SQM, one portion of the salar, and to Albemarle, the other portion of the salar. It's a racketed scheme, whereas you have a higher operating profit, you pay more, and it has a certain percentage that goes to research and development. And we talked to the government, and most importantly, talked to the indigenous communities, and did a modification, changing those percentages. The overall contribution is the same to our proposal to research and development, but we call it also social development, and that goes to the indigenous communities. Being a contract obliges that there's no any royalties or any changes on the rules of the contract, and the contract is being asked to be 30 years. And as Alvaro was saying, we get granted an area within where our mostly held by our mining rights, if not all of them, to extract lithium over time. It doesn't say the amount of lithium you extract per year. Our project is based on 20,000 tons of lithium carbonate equivalent, both projects per year, but we could shorten that. The quota is over the life of the mine, so we could exploit more, take more per year, and do it the same years, etc. But that's basically it. But it's a big document because you have to add all the mining licenses, all the technology, all your estimation of resource, the explanation of all the environmental considerations, etc., etc. And that's why it's reviewed by different commissions over time. We're the first private company to ever do so, to propose a CEOL to the government. The only precedent on this is Codelco, who's a state-owned and has a CEOL. And like I said, the base for all these contracts, who is the leasing contracts with Corfo, a state entity with SQM and Albemarle.
Can you hear me back again, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes, you're back. Yep.
Sorry, I was attached with other connections. We've done a direct connection, so I apologize for that to everybody. So I think one of the other questions there is people want to try and get a sense of when you would hope to hear, but also do you have an ongoing dialogue with the ministry, with the mining ministry? Do we have any feedback? Do they have any further questions, or do we just wait and then get all the response back in one go, Alvaro? Or
no, well, we have sorry to step in and answer myself. We have Alvaro can step in. We have a permanent relation with the different parts of the government. It's not only the mining ministry, it's Corfo, as I mentioned, is the local authorities at the local level of those same ministries. We keep talking to them. There's a committee that came out of the lithium policy, and it also embodies part of the treasury and economy part of the government. And we are with them. We go to conferences together. We meet regularly. We're actually going to be in PDAC in Canada. By the way, we invite people to see us at our booth 2160, and there we're going to be talking with authorities. The government sees our project as a successful early win for the world to tell, as a private company taking a non-strategic salar and develop it forward. So we were encouraged by the authorities. It's just unveiling all this policy and the consultation with the communities and all the environmental things regarding the technology, who were the first ones to start it has taken some time, but we expect that the process that Alvaro outlined, it will kick off soon with the admissibility and then all the other parts of the process.
So I furthermore, Daniel, and as a mode of, sorry, as a mode of like, sorry to step in, but as an example, last year, at the end of last year, we organized a seminar, and the key people on the government regarding the mining industry, they all attended on an exercise which shows the constant and the good relation the company has with the government officials at the end of the day, in order to address the pros, the cons, concerns, etc. together.
Okay, understood. Because I think the main thing, obviously, I get to talk to you guys a lot more than most shareholders, is that you have a constant dialogue with the Ministry of Mining. It's a 1,000+ document, which obviously takes some considerable time to review internally, and then we have the Christmas break. I've forgotten about the fact, Aldo, that you're going to be working with the Chilean government and doing some joint presentations with the Chilean government at PDAC. And for those that don't know, PDAC is the Prospect and Developers Association of Canada, which is one of the largest mining conferences that takes place every year in Toronto. And this year will be on the 3rd to the 8th of March. But it's a massive convention of something like 18,000 people turning up, and different countries take their national stands. And Aldo will be working with the Chilean delegation to promote mining into Chile generally, and specifically in terms of flying the flag for CleanTech Lithium with potential partners, strategic interests, and potential investors. So there's a question here. Sorry, somebody just posted, there's 2 questions on the process, which I'll address now, and there's a couple more about some generic things on DLE, which I'll come to towards at the end with all the other questions. But somebody was asking, so that after 5 months, the process hasn't started. I don't think that's accurate. We're 4 months in, and it's under review by the ministry, and when we're waiting to hear back. But the process started well over a year ago and took about half a year to complete the application or so, based on all the various studies and details that had to go in. And then it was submitted back in early September, and we're now waiting to hear back. Would that be a fair summary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That's
absolutely. And in addition to that, as I mentioned before, there were some pretty drastic changes in the Ministry of Mining 1 month before we submit our application. So at the end of the day, it's a regular for them to take some time.
I mean, I've been doing junior mining finance for 22 years this summer, and I would be very surprised if you'd heard back within a 6-month period, just being the nature of all mining ministries and government bodies, and the fact that there's 1,000+ pages to do, and we're not the only thing in their inbox at any one given time. So the process started back in, well, it started considerably back, but it was formally submitted back in September after considerable internal review. There was another question here saying, so how long does the CEOL process take according to a specified number of days? I don't think it's really something you could take. One would expect to hear back within about sort of 6 months or so. And your understanding, Alvaro, is talking to your relationships within the ministry, we're hoping to hear back within the next sort of month or 2.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, I mean, there is a term for the company to respond if the state requests some more information, but on the other hand, there is not term for the state to comply with each one of these stages. As Aldo mentioned, we are pioneer here. We are the first private company in applying for a CEOL, and there is no doubt that due to the good relation and all the good work we've done, we will hear back from them regarding the admissibility soon. Okay,
well, we will all sit eagerly awaiting those. But I mean, the main takeaway is that we have a constant dialogue. The application was put in September. This is a process dealing with all ministries. I would expect a realistic one to be 6 months. I think actually 6 months would be quite good and quite efficient. This is a procedural thing that we're going through, but we fully expect to get them in course of the dialogue, and there's no reason to believe otherwise. But having done this for a long time, this is just a standard procedure that you do in practically every country when you're going through a permitting process. Now, there's a couple of questions generally here, but I wanted to flip back, if we may, to some earlier slides. Let me just get rid of the question box that's getting up from there. One of the things here, though, I just want to bring attention to this, that Canaccord and Wilson's, and thank you for Nick for bringing this out here, is that Canaccord and Wilson's just put out some updates on their future predicted pricings for the lithium price. But Steve, do you maybe just want to talk to this about the current pricing and where that reflects in terms of our baseline costs?
Yeah, we've got, I mean, current lithium carbonate pricing is about $12,000–13,000 a ton. Hydroxide is about the same. That compares to where it was sometime last year at 80,000. So there's been quite a steep decline. And the reality is you've got a very rapid expansion of demand for lithium carbonate with the expansion of the EV market. And you've got a corresponding catch up from many companies wanting to deliver lithium into the market. And what we have over the course of the last 6 months is maybe the growth rate in demand for lithium for EVs has not quite matched the forecast. Meanwhile, there's been more material coming out of Australia in particular than was envisaged. So there's been a bit of an oversupply of lithium in the last 9 months or so. That's expected to continue into the next year. So
Hi,
the prices
interrupt. Steve, Daniel, can you please change the slide just so to make sure everyone can see it, because we currently see the obtaining CEOL slide. If we can just pull it back to the start of the presentation just so everyone can see the graph.
Yep, I'm sharing that. Is that what you're seeing now?
No.
Okay, I will stop sharing and start again as a new share.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just continue with the market. So the prices came down to this sort of 12–13,000. There's a lot of analyst reports that believe this is about the bottom of the market. Now, once you get down to the position where there are current lithium producers beginning to stop production, as one Core Lithium has stopped production in Australia. Albemarle is cutting back on production. They're a very big producer. You've got lithium companies in North America looking at cutting back their production. You have a number of projects are finding it tough going on financing at these metal prices, so their projects are being slowed. So the overall analysts' consensus is that this is about the bottom of the market, and going into the middle of this year, we'll start to see the prices beginning to go up. And we've got our broker Canaccord got a very long history in looking at supply, demand, and pricing. They've made their forecasts. Others like Wilson's have done the same. If we could see the graph, you would see that Canaccord is looking at the average price for 2024 being $20,000 a ton. They're looking for the price to go up in the next year to $30,000 a ton, as is the recognition that there is going to be continued growth in the EV market. And that the oversupply begins to wind itself down. And the medium-term view from 2027 onwards is there are not enough lithium projects in the world which are identified now to meet the lithium demand into the future. So that there is the expectation that lithium prices will consolidate.
Okay, screen sharing is paused. Can you, I don't know what you, Nick, sorry, are you seeing that from your end or not?
No.
I don't know why that's not coming up. We'll try it one more time. Now,
Thanks.
there's also, so I mean, effectively, what, Steve, do you have any idea of what is the industry average cost price? I mean, we're down there at 4,000, but the reason they're shutting down is because the current prices are below the marginal cost of production.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, there's different numbers for sales price. This has got from a short while ago just over $15,000 a ton. The current price today is between $12,000 and $13,000 a ton. And when you look at the overall number of projects and their projected production capacity, it's indicating that about at these prices, 50% of the spodumene hard rock projects will not meet the incentive price to get into production. They are higher cost than that. Whereas if you look at the brine projects, which we are one of, the operating cost is significantly lower, and only about 25% or 20% of those brine projects will struggle to meet their incentive price. Our incentive price in terms of looking at our operating and capital cost to where we are break even is about $7,000 a ton, according to our last scoping study. So we've got a very healthy gap between our break-even cost and the current lithium price, let alone going back to the long-term consensus price of 22,500, which is what we used in the scoping study. And that shows the importance of being a low-cost operator. Now, if you're down at the bottom end of the cost curve, no matter what the lithium price, you'll always be profitable. The ones that are going to struggle are the smaller hard rock projects. And also in China, you have the lepidolite projects. There's a different type of mineralization to spodumene. It's lower grade than the spodumene. Spodumene is about 1 to 1.5% Li2O. Lepidolite's only about 0.4 to 0.5, and the processing is more difficult for lepidolite. So there's a view that all the lepidolite production becomes uneconomic if the price is below about $15,000 a ton.
I think for the next one in 2 weeks, I'll also see, we'll just do what we should do is we should just run off what is the free cash flow and the NPV if we redo it back at 15,000, because I mean, it still throws off an incredible amount of cash, as I said at the last one. Sorry.
So the message here, analysts are expecting from now on the price beginning to recover. Particularly Canaccord's looking at getting to 30,000 in 2025, up to 35,000 before the market eventually solidifies at about that $22,500 a ton. Wilson's is much the same.
There was a graph I saw this morning in a presentation. I didn't get a copy. It was also talking about the inventory of batteries and how there was a very large inventory buildup in late 22 and early 23, and that's now largely been drawn down. And therefore, the demand from batteries is expected to increase significantly through 2024 and then into the underlying lithium price. But Steve, Aldo, so throwing over to either of you, I had a couple of people ask about this announcement here that went out the other day about Volt Lithium successfully manufacturing battery-grade lithium using DLE, and whether that was a direct impact on us. I was discussing with the investor how it certainly shows the wider use of DLE and reduces some of the perception of the technology risk. But would either of you like to just sort of mention this and talk about it for a second?
Yeah,
Steve, myself.
If I can talk, there's quite a large number of projects which are proposing to use DLE. Now, obviously, us in Chile, there's a number of other projects. We've seen now SQM beginning to look at DLE in their projects. Brine projects in Argentina are looking at DLE. In Bolivia, they're starting to look at DLE. In North America, you know, from the oil brines, in Arkansas and also in Canada, the Salton Sea geothermal brines in California. So lots and lots of projects are looking at DLE. And many companies are developing their own technologies. There are a number of companies out of China which are rather more advanced than some of the North American or European projects. But all of them are making very, very good progress. And what we're seeing is people coming up the pilot plant and the demonstration plant, proving that their DLE works. And here's Volt Lithium is one of them, saying that they have made battery-grade lithium carbonate, you know, from their DLE plant. Vulcan Energy, the same in Germany. We have other companies, I think E3 in Canada, and a number of others already have pilot plant or demo plants, you know, up and running, and are beginning to make lithium carbonate. That's exactly what we're doing with our pilot plant, which is in commissioning now. We'll be making eluate, and very shortly we'll be making battery-grade lithium carbonate as a demonstration that the technology we're using is also effective for our brines. And there's have to realize all the brines are different. No, we're looking at treating our brines at ambient temperature. If you're looking at some of the geothermal brines in Germany, they are very, very salty and, you know, very high temperature. So it's looking at a different adsorbent to the one that we will be using. And very much the adsorbent and the technology is tweaked to make sure it's applicable to the particular brine that is being treated. But all this is saying many companies are there and showing the success of DLE. And every company that has success is good for the industry because the lithium market needs every ton of lithium that can be produced in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, we gotta remind everyone that also the government said that likely the future projects all will be going with DLE, but then the largest salar of the world going actively into DLE heavy testing. It's very good news that is being adopted at all levels in the country. So
yeah, I think if I can just sort of paraphrasing Aldo alongside. So one of the things when we went out and were doing the various capital raises was there was a perception that DLE was unproven outside of China. So Steve was saying that every company that can move towards successfully demonstrating that DLE is working in their projects removes, I think, an element of technology risk. We've got there's the licenses need to be granted. There is the technology risk or perceived technology risk in terms of actually using DLE on our particular brine and producing, and then with all projects, we need to go through the project financing to actually get between now and producing a cash flow revenue. But there's a couple of questions I'd like to address off here, if I may. John, Alan's just asked if we can have a clear timeline for CEOLs. John, we'll try and update with a better one. I'll talk with Alvaro and see if we can outline it, but we are in the hands of a ministry, and ministry has come back when they want to. It's a bit like dealing with the London Stock Exchange on a listing. You put your application in, it depends on how much they're dealing with, but we'll come back and try and give you a clearer line if we could do. There are a couple other questions just early on. Some of them are anonymous here, but there's a question was saying there's never to be another share dilution following the ASX listing. I wouldn't actually agree with that premise. We need to bring in a couple of hundred retail, but I think at 2,000. So depending on where the share price is, it doesn't proceed that there would necessarily be a significant further share dilution. And the question was, would management ever consider a share buyback? That wouldn't be appropriate while the company is still developing the asset. It's something that the board may well consider when the company's got cash flow. And as we stated out previously, at the predicted prices for lithium at north of 15 to 22, the company ends up throwing a phenomenal amount of cash within a very short period of time. But buybacks is something that would only really happy for companies that are revenue positive. There was a question here from Martin Gareth about whether any plans to commercialize the DLE technology to other operators or aquifers. Steve, do you want to just got a comment on that and explain, or Aldo, sorry, the technology that we're using?
Yeah, from day one. Oh, go, Steve,
sorry,
please. Go.
No, Aldo, you go.
Yeah, from day one, as we started developing the technology earlier than all the players here, we've been, for one end, approaching the government, who has several salars. Enami, who is one of the two lithium plays in the state-owned vehicles that they created to operate here in Chile. They've been interested in our pilot plant, who we have in Copiapó, and we'd always said, well, we know what we're doing. We'll be happy to partner and work in the future with your projects, with our technology, and we have that open. We want, of course, we're doing it for our two more developed projects and the other two that we also have in the pipeline. But that's the reality. Steve,
I think when people say, are we going to commercialize our technology, it is not our technology. We've taken a deliberate path not to try and be research and development and develop our own technology. We believe in using well-established technology from third parties and to apply it to our project. So I think we've put into the public domain. In the past, we've been working with a couple of companies in China that have been well established in the DLE field. We've bought the pilot plant, which is technology of Sun Resin. It's from a subsidiary of Sun Resin. We're using, as we announced last week, resin from a company also in China called Lanshen. And that's what we're doing. We're applying latest technology of third parties to our project. And it's not just the first project, Laguna Verde. We already have 4 potential projects in Chile, but we clearly will not be averse to talking to other parties and working on their projects in the future once we've demonstrated success at Laguna Verde.
So there's another question here that came up about JC, just find your question, how much a difference would the lithium price make to getting finance either by offtake or loans? Jay, one of the other modules we wanted to do was actually a deep dive in terms of what the capital costs are and project finance and how it would work with off-takers. And maybe we can address that, but fundamentally, obviously, if the lithium price was to crash below 7, then the project's not at its break-even point. But I would refer back to Steve's comment earlier that we're in the lowest quartile in terms of costs or forecast costs, and therefore it puts the company in a very robust position to be profitable at a broad range of lithium prices. And a lot of the industry here, it's sort of 12.5, 15, are cutting back production or closing down because they're not profitable at these prices. So these forecasters are basically saying is that they think the long-term break-even price to incentivize production to come in is something around about 20,000 to 22,500, which was the long-term figures that we'd used. But it's the same with all commodities. You're seeing a resurgence in uranium because the uranium price is back up. You're seeing a resurgence in the financing of gold projects at the moment because the gold price is up. So like all commodity companies and junior miners, we are very much linked to the lithium price as the underlying commodity. So it would make a difference in terms of the project finance and offtakes, but possibly less in terms of offtake partners because they have a longer term strategic need for lithium over and above banking financing. So there are a number of ways to do it, but what we'll do is we'll work with Gordon and with Steve, and we'll do another session purely around how how you would generically finance a project such as CleanTech's assets. Unless you want to say anything further, Steve?
No, it's very, very important to recognize we're going to be at the bottom end of the cost curve, and the whole industry has to crash before we get hurt. The second part of it is we're going to be producing what we call green lithium, with close to zero carbon footprint, very low water consumption. And that is of specific interest to the EU and North America, who are demanding to see sustainable minerals going into their battery supply chain. So it's not just a matter of operating at a very good price. We have the premium product that these countries want. Now, it is green, sustainable lithium, much more so than material coming out of hard rock mines in Australia and Africa.
There is a little graph I was just trying to bring up in the background here. I will just see if I can share with you, showing a price movement to the lithium price. I don't think I can do it just at the moment, I'm afraid. I'll have to bring it up for the next one. Gentlemen, we're going to focus back on next presentation, a little bit deeper dive on DLE and to explain the process. I will also introduce Tommy, who's the Australian NED. I think I'm going to be down in Australia with Tommy. But Steve, did you just want to give
Daniel, there's just a question. There's a last question that appeared there.
Yeah, we haven't finished off
the
that
other
one.
Permitting. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to go back to the conversation, but before we get to that for one moment, did we just want to give an update on where the company has got to on its current the drilling and the news from the last time that we had?
Steve?
No, Aldo, you can talk on the drilling progress.
Yeah, we have two rigs simultaneously drilling on site, where the drilling is going very well. You can see the map there. We have a well-planned campaign. We're currently wrapping up one of those wells. Then it's all the conditioning for further developing them. We're going to go into we're going into pump test with two of those wells, LB05 and LB06, and then also engage on the re-injection work past that. We have all the permitting for drilling with Senecamin is the entity in Chile that grants those. We have all the work being done with the DGA, Dirección General de Aguas, the General Water Bureau, for all the work on pumping and re-injection, and we'll inform the market accordingly as we go forward. Remind everyone, we're at 4,200 meters. We have a very good record on doing our work in the most professional way, and these samples are collected on site with all the quality control, quality assessment. We're also collecting larger bulk samples that are being taken for further processing in the pilot plant, and again we'll inform the market as we go forward. The blue is the wells we already have done in previous campaigns, and the program underway are the green ones.
And just to reiterate for those that weren't able to be here 2 weeks ago, part of this is to further move the categorization of the resource that we have into the measured and indicated, and part of it is also to step out and add to the overall size of the resource. So both of these form part of the process of going into the pre-feasibility study.
Exactly.
And the last question here from Roland Whiteman. Roland was asking that while we're waiting for the CEOLs, will the company be able to update its shareholders with respect to the other processes being carried out? In particular, there's a reference here to the re-injection process and how that's going. Steve, you'd mentioned that 2 weeks ago.
Well, I just mentioned it. Yeah, we're working with authorities. Alvaro, who's here in the call, he's a lawyer. but he's also very engaged with operations in his background, and he's just been with authorities, me personally with authorities, with the person in charge of our environmental impact assessments, and we keep them updated on what we're doing. Some of the mining laws in Chile really don't require the permit per se. You are allowed to do things, but then you have to inform. Other things require the permit, and that's all regarding what we're doing now. Whose work will fill into the PFS right now, reinjection, drilling, and pumping this. But then there's also all the work on the sectorial permitting that is part also, along with the CEOL, who's an operating permitting, that we're working on a daily basis to advance them, to incorporate them in the PFS and advance, so we get and hit our targets, the goals of the company on being on production. So it's a lot more to that, and thanks for the question. That's what I wanted to answer.
So I think, and we'll come at the end about talking about sort of news flow and events and marketing, but we've just got a couple other slides here for those that didn't were able to join 2 weeks ago. So this is just a shot here of the pilot plant. You can just in the green there see a couple people's heads to give you a sense of scale, but that's still just finalizing through the commissioning process. There's the board looking around there. We're going to go into the DLE more fully on the next one, but as the company's put back, we believe that we're bottoming out on the lithium price. We're actually, the current share price pretty much tracks 95% to the lithium price at the moment, if you follow it over the last 12 months. I was trying to bring up a graph to show you how closely all of the lithium companies have been correlated to the pricing. And we now believe that that will come back significantly over the next 3 to 6 months. In terms of, there was also some questions regarding the last RNS on the pilot plant. That was more the metallurgy. Do you want to stress just, Steve, that was the RNS around the sort of the metallurgy, and we'll be making a further update about the pilot plant in due course?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in the last year on evaluating different adsorbents and looking at which are applicable to our particular brine and which is the best. And we made the announcement that we've decided to use the Lanshen adsorbent, as that had better performance on our particular brine. We went ahead and bought that for the pilot plant. That's loaded into the pilot plant, and now we're in the commissioning stage. And clearly, you have to spend a lot of time optimizing what is the right flow rates through adsorption, the cycle time, the amount of washing, the flow rate of washing, the elution. And all of this is part of the commissioning process, as well as checking that all the valves and electronics and everything is working. So we expect to have finished the commissioning very, very shortly, and then be into running brine consistently through the pilot plant and getting consistent eluate. We'll be tweaking that to make sure we have the best quality eluate to demonstrate it's very low in impurities and it's high enough in lithium content to then send for conversion into battery grade lithium carbonate. So the next piece of work coming out of the metallurgy pilot plant will be results from the commissioning of the pilot plant and how it's performing. So there'll be data on the pilot plant, not the metallurgy, is what we reported last week.
Okay, thank you. Well, everybody, we appreciate everybody tuning in. We had about 60, 65 through the height. There's about 50 of us now. We will keep to the set time. Just to say, the ASX process is ongoing. We're still on track to do that early in the second quarter of this year. Paul Gordon's been going through mountains of paperwork back and forth. I actually I'm down here in Cape Town for Indaba, but I had meetings with the company's lawyers, Allens & Co, just reviewing on the process. I'm going to be down in Australia the week after next as part of that process, but it's all proceeding as one expected, with various documentation shuttling back and forth, but it's all on track for early in the second quarter. And what we'd like to do is the next focus will be a little bit more of a deeper dive 101 on DLE and what actually the processes involved in the re-injection, a bit more explaining. And we'll also have Tommy McKeith, who's the company's Australian NED, which was a requirement for the company to have an Australian director as part of the ASX listing. So we'll also be introducing him to shareholders, but he's extremely impressive individual with a very long track record in the Australian market and extremely well known to Australian investors. Actually, I was with him yesterday and I'm seeing him for breakfast tomorrow morning, but I wanted to give the opportunity for shareholders to also meet him properly. But with that, unless Aldo and Steve, you or Alvaro, you had anything further to add?
Nothing to add. Thank you for inviting
everybody for listening.
Great,
yes,
everybody. We'll
you.
see everyone again in 2 weeks' time. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.